This past week on April 30th, the world saw the loss of one of our great heroes and kindest men, Peter Mayhew. The man behind the mask of Chewbacca, standing at 7'3", got his start actually from a newspaper article about men with very large feet. When he went in to audition for the role of Chewbacca, when he stood up, George Lucas was like, yep, you'll do. And interestingly enough, the character of Chewie was going to actually be played by David Prowse, who was, of course, Darth Vader eventually. And you can just admire Creamskull's little Chewie shirt, which he does not like being in. So he's being camera shy, and there he goes. While Peter Mayhew was in 5 of the main films, he also did feature in the Clone Wars series. It's difficult to write a Wookiee into books because of the language barrier of Shriwook. So I just wanted to briefly talk about some of my favorite stories with Chewie. The very first book that actually mentions Chewbacca as a character is Star Wars: The Adventures of Luke Skywalker. This was written by George Lucas and Alan Dean Foster and was published in 1976, before the movie came out. Get to see the back of the cover, which it looks like the old movie posters. And just a little note that Chewbacca the pirate and his human companion Han Solo have other ideas. Along with Luke, Ben, and a pair of devoted robots, they plan a near-suicidal assault on the Death Star to rescue Leia and free the universe from tyranny and oppression. What follows is perhaps the most thrilling and suspenseful science fiction adventure story in recent years, a book that imaginative readers will find impossible to put down. The one great moment in this book that in the medal ceremony, Chewbacca does get his medal. Why it didn't happen in the movie, I wasn't there, so I don't know. Other really good stories that featured Chewie would be Scoundrels. I highly recommend reading that one. And of course, the last and final book, which I'll mention, which you did see the death of Chewbacca. My favorite non-legend and non-canon story with Chewie was actually when a comic book came about where they had Han and Chewie escaping Imperials, and they blasted to unknown coordinates and ended up on planet Earth, and their ship crashed on the west coast. While there, they were attacked by Native Americans, unfortunately, and Han was killed, and Chewie, with the Falcon 2 damage, could not leave Earth. For years, he wanders the west coast, and then a very famous doctor, archaeologist, explorer, known as Indiana Jones, does eventually go to look for this elusive Sasquatch and discovers the Millennium Falcon and has this weird moment of like, something seems familiar here. The last book that ever featured Chewbacca as a character was Vector Prime, written by R.A. Salvatore, which was the first book of the New Jedi Order, which was a 20-book series. When the Uughguughhhgh, a species from a different galaxy, started to invade the galaxy that we love, they brought this type of technology, which was like animal science technology, and they abhorred anyone who had robots or any kind of form of lightsabers, so they were anti-Jedi, and they just started to wipe out system after system. On the planet of Cernpidal, Anakin, the youngest child of Leia and Han Solo, was in trouble, and they were trying to evacuate the city as there was a moon known as Dabido that had been gravitating towards the capital city as a result from a technology from the Uughguughhgh creatures, where it was kind of like this gravitational mine that pulled the moon towards the planet. As the moon got closer and closer, they were evacuating, everyone that they possibly could. But then Anakin had this moment of trouble and fell off the ship. So Chewie ran off and got him back on board. And Anakin ran up to the cockpit to fly the ship away, but Chewie was at that point too far from the Falcon. When the moon was growing closer and closer and they had no chance to escape, Han saw a battered and bloody Chewie regaining his footing, stood up on high on one pile of rubble and faced the descending moon with arms upraised in a defiant roar. The scene receded quickly, but Han kept his eyes locked on the spot, burning the image of that very last moment of his friend's life indebitably into his consciousness. And then he saw the beginning to the final cataclysm as Dobbido plowed into the city. The landing ramp rose suddenly, locking into place. Han knew it to be the doings of his son, and then the Falcon went spinning away as a shock wave hit her. Han didn't even consider the danger to him and others, not even to his son at that critical moment. He just thought of the Chewie, of the last tragic image of the Wookiee shaking his fist at the great, unbeatable enemy. A fitting last pose of defiance, but one that did nothing to mend the tear ripping through Han's heart. When I read that, I was in tears. Unfortunately, the author of this series did receive a lot of fan mail that was death threats and hatred, and this was the only book he actually wrote for Star Wars due to the pushback from the fans. In the last chapter of the book, he does give a nice eulogy to Chewbacca. Han could find no escape and no reprieve. Now he did think of his friend fully. He pictured so many of the moments he had spent with Chewie, mostly expressions on the Wookiee's face, or a peculiar howl, and no specific events. The events didn't seem important, just the inflections in Chewie's voice, the looks he gave to Han, often argumentative, always with respect, and with honest love. Han glanced over at Chewie's empty co-pilot seat, seeing his friend there again in his mind's eye, picturing him clearly, so vividly, and forcing it even deeper, focusing a mental image of Chewbacca, so crystalline clear that he almost fostered the sudden belief that he could will the Wookiee back from the dead, and because he, Han, couldn't accept the loss, it couldn't be so. But it was, and Chewie was gone, and Chewie wasn't coming back. And those images continued, Chewie running back from the gun pod, Chewie chasing Anakin down the landing ramp, on Coruscant after yet another misfiring of the repulsor coil, Chewie hoisting all three of Han's kids high into the air not so many years ago, when they were not so little, just to prove that he could still do it. Han saw his favorite cap sitting under the co-pilot console, a cap Leia had given to him not long after the birth of the twins, emblazoned with the stitching, "Congratulations, it's a both," on the front. How many times had Chewie stolen that old and ragged cap recently, plopping it on his furry head, stretching the band? Han reached down and picked it up then, and turned it over, seeing the brownish blonde hair of his Wookiee friend plastered inside. All those memories drifting by and always ending with the same stark realization that there would be no more of them, that the book was closed, and that those hairs on the cap were the last ones Chewie would ever put there. So, Chewbacca, who has always been a favorite of mine, and to so many others, he's our sweetest hero, and we did not deserve him. I'll put a link to the Peter Mayhew Foundation in the description below if you want to check it out. It benefits children in Venezuela, and it's a very worthy cause. So to Peter Mayhew, I don't know what we'll do without you. If you want to see some more Star Wars videos, take a look through the lists below. Also, just, feel free to like, subscribe, whatever. Don't. I don't really care. But to Peter, we'll miss you so much.